My name is Brian Harris. I'm a retired detective sergeant from the Houston Police Department Homicide Division. I worked in the Homicide Division for almost 22 years. It was a Sunday morning. I'm sipping my first sips of coffee. And sure enough, cell phone went off, and I knew it.
This is Harris.
Patrol informed our homicide desk that there was a dead body across from Jones High School, located in southeast Houston. Mike was at the scene upon my arrival.
My name is Michael Perez. I had been with the Homicide Division for about 3 months. This would be my first scene as a lead investigator.
Mike didn't have a partner assigned to him, so I volunteered until we could get Mike a permanent partner.
Brian Harris had a reputation as being a good investigator. I knew that if I asked a question and I thought was dumb, he wouldn't think it was a dumb question.
Morning, Detective.
Morning.
So what do we got? So far, not much.
Perez explains this is a woman. He's guessing late 20s. There is no identification, so he has no idea who she is. He believes she has multiple gunshot wounds to the head, but it's very difficult to tell because of the hair and the blood and the mess.
Mike and I then started looking at the crime scene itself. How does that body get there? We noticed that there's what we call transfer blood. The blood evidence told us that the vehicle stopped and a body was dragged out of the vehicle. And then her body is dumped as if it was just a piece of garbage.
All right, let's go ahead and get her up here.
The body is pulled out on the side of the road. Once we were able to get a closer look at the victim, it was clear. This was a gunshot wound to the back of the head or to the front of the head.
Is it one gunshot wound? Is it two? Is it five? You cannot see until you get this body into a morgue under bright lights and the body has been cleaned.
I noticed that the victim had all her jewelry on her. If it was a robbery, why would she still have her jewelry on her?
There's got to be a story here. Perhaps this is a sexual assault. Or is this a domestic violence type situation?
So the information in hand is extremely limited. Who is this person? How did she come to be here? And is there any way we can identify this person?
Murder scene right across the street from a high school. So we were just hoping those cameras had a wide enough angle that it would have caught the dumping of our victim's body.
Is that surveillance equipment only on during school hours? Where is it pointed? We want to see that video footage. And if there's nothing to it, well, then there's nothing to it, but there could be something.
Turns out they quickly were able to burn a copy and we were able to see the video footage. You see two headlights. And sure enough, right at the spot of where the body is dumped, a vehicle stops. You see some kind of movement going around towards the passenger side of the vehicle, which would be consistent where our transfer blood is. And then you see what looks like somebody dragging something big from the passenger side. There seems to be some kind of movement towards the ditch. And then the vehicle takes off again. It's all making sense. This crime scene's talking to us.
The next day, of course, is the 4th of July. Everyone's getting ready for hamburgers, hot dogs, and beer. But Harris and Perez have a job to do. They're going to go to an autopsy, not a picnic.
Morning, Doc.
The autopsies and wounds tell a story, just like a crime scene tells a story.
It's a close contact wound.
So we're looking to see if it's a clean wound, and it's not. You have what's called stippling. That explosion goes into the skin, so it almost looks like burned particles all around the wound. And if the gun is a close impact wound, it will literally brand your skin, and you can't wipe it away.
No signs of projectile.
Any kind of ballistics evidence that was left inside the skull, like say a fired bullet, it would have been really helpful, but we didn't know what kind of weapon we're looking for.
Have you guys got any idea yet?
Not yet. We need to run the prints.
Well, in the state of Texas, they take a fingerprint from you when you get a driver's license. So if this person has a driver's license, there should be a record of her fingerprints.
On July 5th, we get the hit on the fingerprints, and events really started to roll very quickly as far as us being able to determine who our victim was.
The victim is a 31-year-old female named Kumba Sise. Now, who decided that Kumba needs to go away? Somebody certainly did.
One of the first steps is to interview family members, and that was going to be Mike's job.
Michael Perez is about to make his first death notification to a family. There's not many things uglier than that in that line of work, particularly when you arrive at the door wearing a suit, holding up a badge to identify yourself as the police.
Being the first actual victim's family that I'm going to actually talk to you, of course, I was nervous.
Before you say a word, the person that opens that door knows why you're here and knows what you're going to say, because someone is not home who's supposed to be home.
Mr. Cisse?
You see it in their face. I saw it there every time. They know this is the moment they've dreaded all their lives.
Thank you.
Miss Cisse, she was in shock. She was not really wanting to believe what happened. I asked for some background on her daughter. She told me that she was, good kid growing up. She had lots of friends.
I am a friend/sister to Kumba. It was real close. She was a sweet person. She didn't like seeing people down. Didn't have a bad bone in her body. She had great energy, good vibes, and she was on her way to being something. She was good to me.
Her parents are immigrants from Sierra Leone in Central Africa, but Kumba was born in the United States. She's going places at her young age and has done very well for herself.
Kumba was a mover. She was a shaker, and she was on her path to success. She was modeling, and she had a model career. But she wasn't just satisfied to rest her laurels on being a model.
She was working as the host of an internet radio show, and she would interview people on controversial topics and also present independent hip-hop artists to the community. She had ambition, she had dreams. Kumba Cisse seemed to have it going on.
She was gonna use that platform to get to where she needed to be.
It's pretty obvious that Kumba is a together person. She paints a very different picture than you often see among homicide victims who live a dangerous lifestyle. Kumba does not do that.
When was the last time you heard from your daughter?
She was here on Saturday.
Saturday?
Kumba's mother, she had said that Saturday morning at about 11, Kumba showed up
Hey, Mom. Baby.
and was talking about going to a party. It was supposed to be later on that evening, and then Kumba left.
Perez asked the family, was there anyone that Kumba was having problems with?
As Mike is hearing information from family members, there are a couple of possibilities as far as potential suspects. One being a former boyfriend in which they had a rocky relationship and he was very bitter.
His name is David Gabriel, and apparently his relationship with Kumba went south over money.
Give me the money. I don't owe you nothing. Leave me alone.
Money can be a very powerful motive. Money drives people. All sorts of things come back to money as a very strong motive in violent crime. Is that what happened with Mr. Gabriel? I think we better find out. But before Perez leaves, Kumba's family provides a final critical piece of information.
What about her car? You guys found it yet?
No, we weren't aware. Can you describe it?
Her brother did say that Kumba had a vehicle, the blue Volkswagen Beetle. So now we have a vehicle missing.
Now Perez has something he can pursue. Here we have a woman shot to death with a single gunshot wound, and the car has been stolen, perhaps, by the person who shot her.
The only thing the video could confirm was that we were dealing with a small, perhaps bubble-shaped type vehicle, the way it was designed, dark in color, but our instinct was telling us, is this a Beetle?
Where is that car? Who has it now? Did he kill for it? Well, we're about to see it. Now, on the 6th of July,
Hey, it's Sergeant Harris. Got a bolo for you.
Harris and Perez put out a bolo to be on the lookout for this car.
2004 Volkswagen Beetle, blue in color.
But before the hit comes back on the car, Perez wants to talk to a bitter ex-boyfriend of Kumba, whose name is David Gabriel.
Kumba did have an abusive boyfriend, but they broke up. Apparently, Kumba had owed him some money.
Well, now, come on down, my friend. You are the next contestant on The Murder is Right.
I hear that you and Kumba parted on bad terms.
He says, I'm sure you're aware that Kumba's been murdered, and it's my understanding that you had a dispute with her over money.
It's just a misunderstanding, boy.
He says Kumba had her own money, she had her own job, and she would take care of herself.
Gabriel says the issue was moot. Well, anybody could say that, so we're gonna need some other information, Mr. Gabriel. Where were you on the night this murder occurred?
I was outside of town at a house party.
Can anybody verify that?
Yeah.
Gabriel was in front of a couple of dozen witnesses. Perez checks out the alibi, and they all independently confirm that David Gabriel was present all evening at this party.
Appreciate you.
So Gabriel is out. Homicide investigation is a series of challenges, and initially it's often more bad news than good. You cannot lose your resolve. You have to play the game. You often hear people say, well, I'll just have to wait for a break. No, you don't wait for anything. You make your own breaks. You make your own luck. In the case of this Volkswagen, this car is involved in a homicide. And it doesn't take very long for somebody to say, hey, we have that car.
Lo and behold, by Texas Southern University, there's a report of a vehicle fire.
This car is found across the street from a Texas Southern University dormitory building. A burned out blue Volkswagen Bug. Well, who's responsible for this mess?
The arson investigators run the vehicle identification number. They see that it's linked to our homicide report and the death of Kumba.
So they go to the vehicle examination building.
I'm Detective Perez, this is Sergeant Harris.
This is her car. This eliminates a carjacking. Why steal a car at gunpoint and then set it on fire?
You know, it's not as burned up in the back as you might think.
People forget this. Fire needs oxygen. And when you roll up all the windows and then you set the car on fire, it did some serious damage, but it's not going to last very long.
It's a panic attempt at the destruction of evidence. You're going to try to burn a car with a gallon of gasoline with the windows rolled up? You're not exactly the brightest bulb in the fixture, and you don't have much of a plan. It's not a carjacking. It's none of those things. It's somebody she knows, someone she's connected to. That's who killed her. They examine this car, and they discover blood on the inside of the driver's door.
We requested swabs of DNA be taken.
All right, thank you for your time.
All right.
And we're hoping upon hope that at Texas Southern University, perhaps that there's video.
So I drove to check the area out where the vehicle was burned. And I was able to have their surveillance pulled so we can view that video.
When they review that surveillance footage, someone abandons that Volkswagen Beetle car at 2:07 a.m. on the 4th of July. And in the footage, returns a day later on the 5th of July in the company of someone driving a Buick LeSabre.
You see the outline. Clearly, it's the Volkswagen Bug. And then a figure starts rummaging around in that vehicle. The next thing you see is a big flash, a big burst. And then as they're literally running away, the vehicle is in flames. Who brought that person to that scene? Somebody's helping this killer cover their tracks.
Now we have not one, but two mystery players.
While I was doing the research on the vehicle, I received a phone call from a man named Carlton Turney. He said that he's a concert promoter. He has an ID that was found.
This individual had called up Perez and said he'd been following the story on the news.
He was putting on a party, and he rented out a warehouse in the southeast side of town, further east of where the body was found. The party was Saturday, July 2nd, the night of the murder. He said it ended about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Later on that evening, he got a phone call from this guy who owns the warehouse. One of your people from your party dropped their ID. So this probably belongs to one of them.
He hands the ID card to Perez and Harris, and it's the ID card of Kumba Sise.
I noticed there was some blood on the bottom corner of the ID card.
Not only is it her ID, it is smeared with blood. For now, you have a working theory that Kumba was at this party late on Saturday night, so the likelihood is great that the shooting occurs in the parking lot, and somehow or other, the ID card falls out of that car. The problem is the identity of the person behind this is still a mystery. Who are they, and why did they want this young woman dead? Now, Harris and Perez are convinced that someone Kumba knew killed her. So they're going to focus on who knows her well. They begin by going to the internet radio station Style Radio and speaking to the general manager, a Donald Hilliard.
I want to talk to you about one of your hosts, Kumba Sise.
Yeah, Kumba. That was my girl.
Kumba was well regarded by her boss at that station, Don Hilliard. And Don Hilliard thought this woman was going to have a national following one day.
You are listening to Houston's leading internet radio show.
She had it. She had it. She had that radio voice. She had that personality.
She really was the real deal.
Mr. Hilliard explains that Kumba has a boyfriend that on occasion was a co-host with her.
Don revealed crucial information about Kumba's current boyfriend.
His name was Leroy Stutz. Now, this is the first time Harris and Perez have heard that name.
We would have good shows, you know.
Kumba, recently she'd been allowing Leroy Stutes to partake in the radio broadcast.
Do you believe in generational curses? And if so,
They discussed music, lifestyle. She was always a go-getter. She was gonna make sure she did what she needed to do to get where she wanted to be. And that made him jealous. He didn't like it.
The police learned that Kumba had invited another woman to co-host one of the programs.
Yes, wedges have to go. I keep telling you, Drake loves waffle fries. Does he?
And when Stutes found out about this, he went wild.
I mean, tell me to calm down. This is not her show.
He went into a rage.
Leroy seemed extremely irritated that Kumba was more popular. And Leroy, he didn't generate the same popularity that Kumba did.
Is that a motive for murder? Not having enough fans? Who knows what comprises a motive? People have a reason to kill. It often can be a completely insane reason, but it's a reason.
And then the event that set everything off, and that was the end of Leroy's radio career.
I think we as women need to take the time to empower men more.
Y'all complain about this, you complain about that. Women, all the same. All of you. So maybe when you up here giving advice?
Leroy went on a rant, using the most degrading terms.
Yeah, you sit there on that mic saying this.
Don said I had to let him go. I couldn't have this kind of personality on the air and jeopardize everything that Kumba and himself had built up.
So, what is it that you're upset about, Leroy? Is it the fan thing, or is it something else? Let's find out exactly who you are, Leroy, and see what you've been up to in your life. So Perez and Harris pulled a record in criminal history of one Leroy Stutes.
Hey, Mike, come check this out.
And they are floored by what they find.
In 1992, he committed a murder and was convicted in that case and received a sentence of 45 years in prison and served almost 18 years of that sentence.
A 45-year sentence for murder, or for some unknown reason, the parole board releases him. Well, Leroy, you seem like a charming fellow. So, Kumba, what are you doing with this thug? That's the question. There are young women, unfortunately, who are attracted to the bad boys, the wild and free type. The trouble with bad boys is they do bad things.
We don't have enough to get a warrant on this guy to even bring him in and talk to him. Right now, everything is just circumstantial.
Harris and Perez would like to assemble an affidavit in support of an arrest warrant for Leroy Stutes, but they don't have it. And they know they don't. That's the worst position to be in. So what do? You keep looking. You keep moving forward. The surveillance tapes show the Buick LeSabre. Harris does a registration check on Buick LeSabres that might be associated with the Stutes family, and it turns out Leroy's daughter Latrice is a registered owner of a Buick LeSabre.
We didn't know how we were going to proceed with this. With Latrice at the scene.
Things have gotten even more interesting.
Shortly after this point, my phone rings and I get a call. And there's a man on the line named Daryl.
Okay.
And he sounds very panicked. Daryl identifies himself as Leroy's cousin. What Daryl said was that very late on July 2nd, he was over at his sister's house, Rhonda's, which is also in Southeast Houston. Next thing, Leroy shows up.
Just listen to me, all right? Because we ain't got time.
Leroy had scratches on his face, and Leroy needs a change of clothes, and he's panicked.
Leroy Stutes has blood on his clothes, and Darrell doesn't like any part of this.
All right, chill. And so Daryl was able to provide Leroy with a new set of clothes, new shoes, but he left a pair of boots.
Well, we'll be right over to see you.
Come on, quick. I don't want nobody seeing.
And you got to keep in mind, there is a intelligence network in the underground who's saying what about whom and who is disloyal to others. They're not interested in helping the police. They're interested in helping the victim.
There's a pair of brown polo boots,
Yeah, it looks like blood.
and I noticed there's blood on the boots.
So a remarkable find in terms of evidence to be examined by forensics.
I'll get these over to the property room and have them swab for blood.
In the meantime, I'm going to see what I can find out about the daughter.
What can she tell us about what dear old dad has been up to? Detective Perez now must run forensic tests on a pair of boots that belong to our primary suspect, Leroy Stutz.
Yep, that's positive ID for blood.
With that information, I call Harris back. I said, hey, look, it's blood. He says, all right, I'm going to call the DA.
Harris issues arrest warrants for Leroy Stutz for first-degree murder. But where is he now? Harris wants to talk to Leroy's daughter, Latrice.
The kind of car that Latrice drives, a Buick, is very similar to the car that we see on the video.
What do you have to say about that, Latrice? Harris is an expert interrogator, but Perez has to learn, so he's going to allow Perez to do this. He will oversee it, but Perez will do the questioning.
It's an opportunity to now establish relationships in that interview room and try to get information that is crucial to the case.
Let's talk about your father.
When I was talking to Latrice during the interview, I asked her if she was really close to her dad. She said, no, not at all.
I know what I think, but I want to know
I
what
said,
you think.
he's been away for a long time. Have you tried to get close?
Not really.
So then I asked her, well, do you think he's capable of hurting somebody?
Well, I mean...
She says, well, yeah, he can hurt somebody. I said, well, do you think he may have hurt Kumba? He said, well, they have arguments, but what they do behind closed doors is what they do behind closed doors. So she left it at that. So I bring up the Volkswagen.
He asked me to take him to go.
She says, well, my dad asked me to take him over there. She said he got out of the car and went to the Beetle and then came back to the car and we left. I said, you didn't see him burn the car or anything like that? She's like, no, I didn't see any of that.
She doesn't reveal that she sees him set it on fire, but it's a pretty darn good statement. And hats off to Mike to getting somebody who is very hostile, inadvertently, without her even knowing, reveal very damaging information about her father. I think of that old show, Kung Fu, where they have the pebble in the hand, and before you become the master, you got to grab that pebble. Clearly, Mike was ready now to grab that pebble from my hand.
Latrice is evasive and uncooperative, but she finally puts Leroy Stutz in the middle of that VW 1 or 2 moments before it begins to burn. So they actually got from her what they wanted. Therein lies the art of interrogation. Given that information and the footage, Latrice Stutz could be an accessory after the fact to that crime, and she's placed in custody. But our suspect, Leroy Stutz, is still in the wind. In the meantime, Harris and Perez need to start building their case, starting with the motive. What made him kill her? Because right now you don't know. You're convinced you know it's him, and you're probably right about that, but why did he do it? So Harris discovers Latasha White. Kumba and her, they were very good friends, and Harris always wondered why Kumba would associate with a criminal like Leroy Stutz. Latasha White provides an answer to that question in the fact that Leroy Stutz lied to her.
Originally, he told us the reason he went to jail was because he had did a robbery. He did not tell us that he murdered somebody.
Leroy Stutz lied to Kumba, said he'd been in prison, but it was for robbery, and he took the fall for an associate and good friend.
Kumba tells her friend, Leroy's not the guy that I thought he was.
Like, I gotta find a way out from under this dude. For real, for real.
The man told so many lies he couldn't keep up with them.
Kumba, she knew Leroy had been to prison, but in the last few days, she finds out it's not robbery or burglary, it's murder. Well, that's pretty powerful.
Like, and then I keep hearing about all the stuff that happened in jail with him.
Kumba told me, I think he gay. And I was like, what you mean? And she was like, I heard something, I think he gay.
There were rumors about Kumba confronting Stutes about his sexual history in prison.
So you begin to unravel the onion. You pull away one layer after another. Who are you, Leroy? And what pushed your buttons to the point where your girlfriend wound up dead?
We also believe that Leroy's pretty pissed. He didn't like the idea that Kumba was telling people he was sleeping with men. And so he was angry. This was a time bomb ready to explode.
When criminals flee, they go to predictable places. Sometimes they go where their money is, their mama is, or sometimes their main squeeze, who might hide them or help them because no one else will. And true to form,
so you know, I've just got a couple pairs that I want to get.
after a week of searching,
Show me your hands! Back up towards me!
our man Leroy Stutes is seen stepping out of his mother's car at a commercial business.
Leroy Stutes, you are under arrest for the murder of Kumba Cisse.
And he's arrested without incident for first-degree murder.
What's over there?
Hi, hey, Leroy. I'm Brian. This is Mike. You did something really, really bad, and you know that I've been doing this game a long time, so I'm not going to waste your time.
You're talking to the wrong person about you, Kumba.
Well, my, Leroy. Had to go see Mom. Now it's your turn to go see a judge.
And you're right. I do believe that you're responsible for Kumba's death. What happened on that weekend of July 4th weekend?
I get those scratches on your face.
Me and my sister was coming in the house in the dark, and I failed to get my face on the stool.
Harris is an expert interrogator, but in the case of Mr. Stutes, Harris identifies him as a sociopath, that he has no emotion. So he decides the best thing to do with him is to go directly at him, to lay out the case that he has against him. And he does so bit by bit.
I want to share some things with you. We have your boots with the blood on them. How do we explain that? That your DNA is on Kumba's pants and clothing. But let's look at what we have here. We have her car that we found. We have somebody that loves you that admits that they took you to that car. We have your boots. All right? We got video. Okay? What else do we have here? Took a while. We have DNA evidence. We have the vehicle, the video, the clothing, the boots. And I think that kind of sank with him. We had too many people. His own daughter who placed him by that car. We had enough for Leroy Stutes. And look where it leads us. Right to you. Okay? Now, we're here talking to you because you're the only one that killed her.
I think y'all really know I didn't do this.
Stutes just sits there and looks at him and denies all of it. I didn't do those things. You have to remember that Leroy thinks he's a genius. He thinks he's very clever, and he's covered up all his tracks. He thinks he's smarter than anybody in the room, and he's not as smart as the chair he's sitting in. We believe that, in the end, the following events took place. It's after 11 o'clock on July 2nd. Kumba meets up with Leroy, and she's at this warehouse, a public place where she can have this breakup.
Will you stop?
Coming over here thinking we're gonna break up.
And she's breaking up with Stutes. She leaves, and I think it's right then and there. She has the argument, and it continues out into the parking lot.
I said, yo, hold up.
No, go home. Stop! Give me my purse. Quit playing with me.
And I think Stoots grabs her purse, grabs her.
Hey, we ain't done. We ain't done. Let's say we
We
done.
are done. Go home.
Now you're going to get
Now you stop.
Hey, I'm serious. Get in this car.
Stop.
Now.
And he pulls out a pistol.
Leroy, stop.
Now, they have a physical fight.
Leroy, stop.
Why do we know this? Because Stoots in the interview room has scratches above his eye.
What I say is, get inside.
Her lanyard somehow falls out.
Get inside.
And I think he makes her get into the car.
It's too late.
He's holding her at gunpoint. It hits her on the left back side. He stole from the world everything that Kumba could bring to it. It's Kumba who could have done so much with her life.
You get emotional when you kill. You don't think straight. You make 100 mistakes, maybe even 1,000 mistakes. You're going to drag a body in a residential neighborhood. Nobody's ever going to see this person when the sun comes up. Doesn't make any sense, but that's what he does.
And he gets back in the car and he drives over to Rhonda's house. He asks Daryl for a change of clothes, but he messes up. He leaves his polo boots behind. And then at some point in time, he goes to TSU and he drops off the car. Later on, he contacts his daughter. He wants a ride. And she admits that she's at the TSU campus, puts him with the vehicle. And the only thing she doesn't admit to is seeing him actually set it on fire. The car gets torched.
Leroy Stoots goes to trial, pleads not guilty, because, of course, in his mind, he isn't guilty. Someone insulted him. You don't do that, not to him. When the trial is over, the jury finds him guilty unanimously, and he is sentenced to life without parole in the Texas State Penitentiary system, where he remains to this day.
A killer, a murderer, a monster. That's what he is, a monster. I just want to say something to Leroy. I hope he rot in hell. I hope that they don't give him the death penalty. I want him to live with what he has done for the rest of his life and die knowing what he did.
This case really is like so many other domestic violence when the woman finally decides, this is it, I've had enough, I'm gonna move on. That's also the most dangerous time. And at least for Kumba, it was the deadliest time.
If that parole board would have never let that man out, Kumba would probably be on 97.9 right now. When he took her, he took a lot from a lot of people. He took away a sweet person. Like, this girl would, oh my God.
Harris and Perez did not get a confession in this case. Hardly anyone ever does. That's not the point. The point is they conduct a thorough, professional investigation resulting in the arrest and conviction of a person responsible for a killing. What a piece of work. The sociopath in action, and results in the tragic loss of a 31-year-old girl who just wanted to live her life and found precisely the wrong person to play with.
Detroit, January 1989. A streetlight shivers above the snow like a nervous eye. The wind lifts torn flyers from a telephone pole, paper wings flapping against frost and rust. One word repeats on every sheet, stamped in black ink that bleeds in the slush. Missing. The city holds its breath. Sirens in the distance knit and unknit the dark. A bus sighs at the curb and leaves a ribbon of diesel across the corner of Fort and Livernois. A girl steps off and does not make it home. This is the opening cut. Cold case. Mysterious disappearance. Community shock. A strange clue no one notices until it is already too late. Her name spreads through the neighborhood like a secret told in a whisper. She is 18, with a laugh friends describe as contagious, and a coat that is 2 sizes too big because she borrowed it from her brother that morning. Her route is short, past the corner store with its buzzing neon promise. Left at the diner, where the graveyard cook flips pancakes for men with tired eyes and newspaper fingers. Across the lot behind the auto shop, where a single glove lies half buried in crusted snow, a path she has walked 100 times. If there is a moment where the timeline fractures, it is somewhere between the diner light and the alley that smells of antifreeze and damp cardboard. The clock on the bus said 9:17. By 9:28, her mother is watching the window, face framed by crocheted curtains, thinking the weather is slowing her down. By 10:05, the phone calls begin. Detectives step into frame with coffee breath and sleepless jackets. The precinct hums with static, and the clatter of typewriters still fighting to matter. The first hours are the loudest. Everyone talks at once. The boyfriend, the best friend, the older neighbor who always rakes her sidewalk without being asked. A clerk at the corner store says he sold her a pack of grape gum at 9:21. The cook at the diner says he saw her reflection in the window as she passed, a smear of blue moving through the snow. Across the street, a church bell notes the hour. In a city where engines outnumber candles, prayer still pushes through the exhaust. Headlines build themselves. Detroit teen vanishes. Last seen in heavy snow. Police hunt for clues. Neighbors shocked. The words move fast, faster than facts can keep up. Sound bites clip truth into 20-second pieces and broadcast them into living rooms where kids fall silent and parents click their tongues and the dog lifts his head like he can smell fear on the screen. Volunteers gather at the VFW hall with staplers, markers, and thermoses. Tape rips. Posters go up. The world shrinks to street names and alley mouths, and the question everyone asks but no one answers. Where did she go? The camera of the mind rolls across the route for the 10th time. A bus stop planted like a metal tooth. Footprints that blur and then vanish under new snow. A crushed cigarette with lipstick ghosting the filter that turns out to be from someone else. A dent in the chain link where bodies might have pushed through, and a small thing no one thinks about until weeks later. A trail of grape gum wrappers like neon confetti embedded in the ice. They look like trash. People step on them. They get salted, plowed, turned into papery fossils. But there they are, bright as bruises, a line pointing somewhere no one wants to go. We enter the family home as if we should be quiet. The kitchen has a bowl of fruit no one touches, and a calendar with birthdays circled in red. Her mother moves like a metronome between phone and window and sink and table, measuring a grief that has not learned its final shape. Her brother sleeps in his shoes by the door. The couch sags under coats. The air is heavy with the smell of wool and wet socks. A pastor visits. A neighbor brings a casserole and leaves it untouched on the counter. Every knock at the door is a possibility. Every ring is a cliff. The silence that follows each one is the closest thing to an answer. The first suspect arrives on the screen like they all do. Too convenient. Too near. The boyfriend with record sleeves for a personality and a mouth that tightens when questions turn. He is angry, which looks like guilt until you watch him long enough to see that it is grief trying to burn itself out. He tells the detectives where he was at 9:30 and 10 until by 10:30 a bowling league, a receipt, an alley of pins and fluorescent light. He is not our villain. He is a boy who cries into his palms on the back steps and presses his forehead to the cold as if cold can answer back. Next is the auto shop night manager who closes early when snow piles up, and he says he saw nothing, heard nothing, knows nothing. He passes a polygraph that means less than the headlines suggest. He shows the officers his hands, oil ground into the creases like second skin. He looks like a man built to be suspected. He walks to his car under streetlights that fizz and pop. He keeps his head down in the grocery store. He is a silhouette in the early chapters. We keep him on the board because we have to, not because he fits, but because he could. The search radius expands and thins. Launched like a flare, the story draws strangers who swear they saw her at a gas station 5 miles south, at a diner near the freeway, in a car with a man whose face is nothing until it is everything. False sightings stack up like pills. The phone line hums. Each call opens a door that leads to more doors, and then to a wall. Detectives drive out to each, turn their wheels through slush, step into fluorescent light and apology. The case file grows fat. A city moves on because cities must, but the family does not. They live inside the moment when she stepped off the bus and before she didn't come home. That space becomes a room. That room becomes a house. They decorate it with what if. Time will teach them a cruel vocabulary. Pending. Leads exhausted. No evidence of foul play, and yet no evidence to the contrary. A sentence that feels like a shrug. The phrase cold case does not drop all at once. It settles slowly, a frost line crawling over a field. The posters fade. The telephone pole acquires new layers. Yard sale this Saturday. Lost cat. Candidate promises change. Underneath, her eyes look out from the grain of the wood, rain-warped, as if the city itself cannot remember her clearly and is ashamed of that. Back in the precinct, a younger detective with restless hands keeps the file on his desk long after his shift moves him to a different unit. It becomes his midnight reading. He chews the end of his pen until blue stains his lip. His partner ribbing him gently. Let it go. It is older than your badge. He answers with a shrug he hopes looks casual, but the sound of grape gum wrappers ripping free of ice will not leave his head. He will not tell anyone this, because it sounds foolish, but the wrappers feel like a breadcrumb trail. If you follow them, where do they lead? We walk the route again. The city a little older, the light a little different, the snow now memory. The corner store is boarded up after a fire that started near the ATM. The diner's sign blinks with 2 letters dead so that it reads only DR. And maybe that means something if you are the kind of person who reads meanings in broken neon. The auto shop changed hands. The church sold its bell to pay for a new roof, and now a recorded chime plays from a weatherproof speaker. The bus stop is still a metal tooth, but someone has painted it with a mural of the river in summer. The paint peels in shapes that look like unreadable letters. Our detective stands under it and waits for the one memory that matters to find him. He visits the family again, years late. With coffee and a notepad, he promises he will not fill with empty hope. He listens to the silence as if it is a witness. The mother shows him a shoebox that no one opened in public before because pain is a private currency. Inside are notes from neighbors, a strand of ribbon from a vigil, a report card, a half-used booklet of bus tickets, a pack of grape gum gone white with time. He holds the gum like a relic. He turns it in his fingers. He notes the brand. He asks where she bought it. The mother points without looking, as if the direction still burns. The corner store, before the fire, before everything warped into aftermath. We cut to evidence storage. Concrete floors, corridors like thought tunnels, a clerk who knows where everything is because she has learned to talk to the shelves. Dust motes float like slow snow, boxes marked with years and case numbers. The detective signs out a carton thick with reports and photographs. He takes it to a metal table under a light that makes every crease look deeper. He sorts. He tries to see not what is there but what is missing. The best investigators know to read negative space. The eye is lazy. It wants to be told. He refuses to be told. He asks the case to argue back. There is a photograph of the alley behind the auto shop that looks like 100 other alleys. He holds it close. A dumpster with peeling paint, a chain-link gate, a thin shining line on the asphalt that could be melted ice or something slicker. And there, near the curb, what looks like a smear of purple no bigger than a thumbnail. On the back in black marker, a casual note from the tech who shot it years ago. Likely candy wrapper, no collection. He feels the click of anger, short and sharp. Not because the tech was careless, but because the city was loud that night, and the cold was louder, and the idea that small things scream is a hard sell under sirens. Cold case, yes, but not dead. He copies the photo. He visits the lot again. He maps every drain. He asks the current shop owner when the pavement was resurfaced, 3 summers after the girl went missing, because salt and winter destroy everything here. He asks who did the work. He finds a name on an old invoice kept in a binder under the counter, taped together with duct tape and loyalty. He calls the paving company and asks if they keep records of what they dug out. Gravel, trash, metal fragments, tires, nothing that matters. He hears what they are not saying. No one believed what came up could be evidence. It was waste. It went to a transfer station on the edge of the river. It went into the city's stomach. Night again. The detective drives where the city hides what it no longer wants. Trucks sigh, backing in and out, beeping into the gray. A manager with a clipboard squints at the request. Old logs are in a trailer that no one opens unless subpoenaed. The detective smiles in a way that offers trouble and a handshake in the same breath. He offers to do the lifting. He flips pages that smell like damp wood and engine heat, searching for 1 week in January when everything tilted. He finds a notation about a small collapsible dumpster pulled from behind a shop on Fort, flagged for contamination due to solvent leaks. He copies the entry and tucks it into his pocket like a burning match. This is not a solution. Not yet. This is a thread found in a pile of threads. Pull it and it might snap. Pull it and it might lead you under the city, where tunnels of consequence run beside tunnels of chance. The camera moves in close on his hands as he assembles a stack of small somethings that add up to almost. That trail of grape wrappers, that photo with the purple smear, that invoice for resurfacing, that transfer station log with a flagged load. The sound design picks up his breath. The clock on the wall ticks like a metronome set to impatient. Detroit sleeps with one eye open. And we have not talked about the voice on the hotline that came every January on the same night and then hung up at the second ring. We have not returned to the neighbor's porch light that flicked on at 9:26, though he swears he was not home. We have not mentioned the woman at the bus stop 3 blocks north who found a silver ring in the snow and wore it for a year before guilt made her take it to the precinct, where it was placed in a drawer without a label, because sometimes that is what happens when work stacks up and the person at the desk is new and the phones will not stop. We will gather each ghost and ask for its name. But in this moment, we freeze the frame on our detective and the boxes and the terrible bright hum of overhead light. He is not a hero. He is stubborn enough to keep a case alive that everyone calls cold. He will make calls that lead nowhere. He will anger people who want this pain filed under the past. He will walk the route again when the first heat storm of summer bends the horizon into waves. He will stand outside the diner where the air blinks, and he will press his palm to the window and feel the grease and the years and the echo of her reflection passing. And in that reflection, he will see the shape of an answer he cannot prove. Not yet. Cold case. Mysterious disappearance. Community shock. Strange clue. The 4 corners of a map we cannot fold away. The city watches. The river carries secrets under a skin of light. The street light above the bus stop still shivers when the wind arrives without warning. Somewhere, someone has a memory. They have not learned how to speak. Somewhere, in a box, a ring waits for the right name. Somewhere, the grape gum that tasted like a childhood she barely finished is still an aftertaste in the air of an alley that learned how to hold silence. The investigation breathes because one man refuses to let it stop. The night leans in to listen. The next step is a door we have not opened yet. Snow melts into black runoff along the curb as the city shifts from winter to its jittery in-between, that season when everything looks like a bruise. The detective carries the flagged transfer station entry like it might drip if he tips it wrong, a single page that hums louder than it should. He wants to see what went where, who signed for it, which route the truck followed when the alley behind the auto shop coughed up that small collapsible dumpster. He drives to the municipal yard and watches a forklift ballet of pallets and bins. Men in reflective vests, guiding machines with 2 fingers and a head tilt. Clipboards rule this kingdom. He asks for the load sheets from January 1989, and the supervisor laughs without humor, the way people laugh when you ask for a photo of smoke. But there are carbon copies and ledger lines, and the habit of routine that outlives memory. In a metal cabinet, a binder labeled with a year and a season holds a page that should matter to no one. On it, a route number, a driver's initials, and a note in tight block letters. Acrid solvent odor, bag tear, contents repacked, shift lead notified. He writes the driver's initials in his notebook and circles them twice until the ink dents the paper. The past is talking. You have to put your ear to the cabinet to hear it. He finds the driver at a diner off the service road. The kind of place where coffee tastes like someone loved it before you, and the eggs arrive already forgiven. The man's hands look like knotted rope, and the years have softened him into a careful storyteller. He doesn't remember the girl. He remembers a winter where the alleyways steamed from engine heat and the crows learned to follow the trucks. He remembers a tear in a bag that almost cost a man his eyebrows when something sharp inside nicked a container and the air turned spicy and dangerous. He remembers duct tape and cursing and a shift lead named Corey who always carried a marker behind his ear like a carpenter. He remembers because fear prints sharper than comfort. The detective writes down Corey's last name, thanks the driver, leaves cash for the check, and sits in his car letting the heater click. He can feel the case turning like a safe dial, numbers falling into place he can't see yet. The ring resurfaces like a fish flashing silver, a detail simple enough to drown in paperwork unless someone pulls it onto the table and makes it breathe. A woman 3 blocks north found it in the snow a week after the disappearance, wore it, then surrendered it to a desk drawer at the precinct without a tag. He asks evidence for a drawer that should not exist, and the clerk frowns as if he has accused her of gravity. Drawers exist, labels fall off, people change desks, and the handover gets messy. Together they open a file cabinet that smells faintly of rubber bands and old magazines. At the back, behind a stack of seized Polaroids from another life and a mason jar full of ballpoint pens that died loudly, a small cardboard tray holds an alloy circle turned dull with time. The stone is tiny, not upscale. The band engraved on the inside with 3 letters that time has nibbled but not erased. He writes the letters down and lets them stand for a breath. Not names yet, only the skeletons of names. Cold case, strange clue, community shock that never entirely lost its echo. He signs the chain of custody properly, corrects the past with a form, takes the ring to the lab with a note so neat it looks unlike him. Please check for trace. Please image the engraving. Please do not lose this again. He keeps walking the route until the route starts walking him. People age in doorways, and their eyes tell you what their mouths decided to lock away. The neighbor with the porch light that flicked on at 9:26 stands by his railing, hands inside a heavy cardigan, and says he was working nights back then, gone by 9, so the light's timer must have been off. A small detail trips over the word must. He accepts the statement, then studies the porch light from the sidewalk. The fixture is old, the kind that doesn't know what a timer is. Inside, a push switch sits at shoulder height. Someone flicked it. The neighbor says maybe his wife came out to take the trash, but the trash barrels were in the alley. The detective thanks him, walks away, and then turns back because the itch won't leave. He asks to see the basement because basements are where stories walk around without shoes. The neighbor blinks and then shrugs, the universal sign for you're not going to find anything. But go ahead. The basement smells like detergent and old water. On a shelf, a box of winter lights, a bundle of extension cords, and a plastic tub labeled with masking tape. December. Inside the tub, a strand of small porch bulbs and a mechanical timer with a yellowed wheel. The neighbor stares like the box just spoke. Memory loses details and fills in shame. The detective touches nothing, says nothing, and in saying nothing, says everything. The light turned on at 9:26 because the timer said so. Not proof of presence, but a correction to a ghost story. The hotline call returns as if it never left. A ring on the same night every January that ends 2 heartbeats after hello. On paper, it is a prank. In the throat of the case, it is a ritual. He pulls the old recordings, thin tape hiss like a winter snake, and plays them for himself in a dark room where he can listen with the part of his brain that lives behind language. The voice is a whisper scrape, neither high nor low, the syllables unformed, but the breath rate is steady, almost meditative. People who panic breathe in sawteeth. People who plan breathe in lines. The calls stop at the second ring because someone is feeding a rule they made for themselves. 2 rings, enough to wake the guardians of the house, not enough to trace. He asks telecom for old switch logs, and they laugh again without humor. He asks anyway. A week later, a box arrives with dot matrix printouts and grease marks. He feeds them into the scanner, digitizes what the city forgot it owned, and lets software he barely trusts hunt for any number that flares with repetition on the anniversary night. One does, but only as a smear of exchange and trunk, not a full path. He writes it down. Another circle drawn. The map of absence becomes a drawing made by someone's shaking hand. He visits the diner where the cook remembers her reflection and orders nothing but a glass of water and a seat with a view. The neon letters still skip a beat, now reading dire with the O back on and the N gone, which feels like a joke the universe makes when it thinks you're not paying attention. He waits. Old regulars fill booths with their quiet traffic of small deals and smaller sins. Cops come in for pie and leave, just the tips you give to be forgiven for being a cop among people who hide their truths in napkin dispensers. The detective studies the window for the angle of that long-ago reflection, how night turns glass into a stage. He notices something he had no vocabulary for as a rookie, how the bright interior throws a version of the outside back at itself, ghost overlaid on ghost. A person crossing the sidewalk becomes a smear that elongates, the exact height of the reflection different from the person by an inch or two depending on where the viewer sits. A witness can be correct about movement and wrong about the body. The cook said blue coat. The file says she wore her brother's coat, navy padded, with a tear under the left pocket her mother stitched with black thread. He writes the thread down, because thread keeps showing up and maybe that is a joke too. The auto shop keeps its ghosts in the floor drain. The new owner, a man with a face made out of apology, lets the detective pull the grate and shine a light down the throat. Sand, glass, the fine glitter of ground brake pad, a tiny city built from years of work. He asks where the trap empties and the owner shrugs. A catch basin, a line that joins other lines, somewhere underground. Everything the shop ever shed shares a slow conversation. The city's public works office prints a map that looks like veins. He traces the path from this throat to a larger pipe, then to a collector, then to the wastewater plant by the river. He knows he will not find a piece of anything left that sings of a girl from 1989. He follows it anyway, because sometimes the following is the spell, and the spell wakes what it needs to wake. The plant smells like a dare. He stands on a catwalk and listens to the roar. The river ignores him, moving as if it never met him. He brings the ring to the lab again, stands impatiently while a tech runs a gentle cleaning that coaxes out a history etched small. Under the scope, the letters resolve. CMB or GMB. The first letter wears a curve that could be either. The engraver hurried, the metal soft, the tool dull. Inside the band, the tiniest notch like a bite. The tech tells him sometimes low-cost alloys nick at the stamp. He hears cheap. He hears bought fast. The stone is not diamond, but cubic zirconia, common at kiosks that bloom around holidays. He thanks the tech, carries the ring back to his desk, places it beside the photo of purple on asphalt and the transfer station page with Corey's name. He writes CMB and GMB in a column, then tries names that could wear those letters comfortably. Carla Marie Brown, Gina Marie Bledsoe. He stops. The ring is not hers. It belonged to someone close enough to be inside a moment. A friend, a cousin, a boy with a girl's ring in his pocket because he wanted to be the kind of boy who had answers when fear asked questions. He looks for kiosks. The newspaper archives yield an ad block from December 1988 for a holiday bazaar at St. Athanasius, tables of handmade soap, crocheted scarves, and a jeweler with the improbable name of Dino who would engrave while you wait. The flyer shows a heart outline and a promise of one-day romance for under $20. He visits the church office. The secretary remembers Dino and his cart because the wheels scratched the hall floor and the priest scolded him. Dino retired to Florida, as every Dino is contractually obligated to do. The secretary does not have a forwarding number, but she remembers that he had a nephew who took over the booth at the Eastern Market on Saturdays, selling cheap bracelets to teenagers who practiced being seen. The detective goes to the market, not hoping, just moving. A man in a puffed vest points him to a closed stall with a corrugated door and a paper taped to it. Saturdays only, cash only, engravings while you wait. He leaves a card under the door, then lingers among crates of apples and the hiss of onions being moved from one life to another. He does not expect the stall to open for him like a stage queue. It doesn't. He files the place in his head under soon. Back at the house with crocheted curtains, he asks to see anything not yet seen, and the mother brings out a bag of winter things that shouldn't hurt, but do. The borrowed coat, folded. Inside the left pocket, his fingers find the stitch tear, and under the stitch, a trace of something gritty, as if the last thing that pocket held fought back. He holds the grit in his palm. It could be sand. It could be the ground brake pad glitter he saw in the drain. He takes a sample with a cotton swab, seals it, labels it like a prayer. The brother stands in the doorway, older now than his sister ever got to be, and asks if this will finally end. The detective answers with the only honest sentence available. I do not know, but I will walk it to the end. Patterns gather the way thunder gathers. He pulls old assaults within 5 miles of the bus line, filters for winter, filters for after 9. A handful flare on the map, small crimes no one stitched to the big one, because they did not bleed in the same color ink. A purse taken by a man with a chemical smell. A woman grabbed at the bus shelter who said the hand on her mouth tasted like metal. A teenager chased behind the grocery who hid in a freezer delivery bay until the footsteps faded. She remembered a ring on the man's finger that scratched her cheek, a cheap band with a square stone. She never reported that detail because the officer who took the statement rushed to close out his shift, and she didn't push, because it is hard to insist when your knees still shake. He finds her, now a nurse, now a person who doesn't owe him anything. She sits at a kitchen table with a new light above it and repeats the memory like a diagnosis. She draws the ring on a napkin. Square stone, thick band, a notch that caught and stung. She keeps the napkin for a second too long before letting him have it, as if the paper contains a younger version of her that she isn't ready to release. The call comes from the market man with the puffed vest. The stall will be open on Saturday if the detective still wants to talk. He arrives early, watches Dino's nephew snap the corrugated door up in a gesture practiced so often it has become a greeting. Inside, displays of plated chains, promise rings, bracelets with names spooled in wire. A small box of blank bands waits beside an engraving pen that buzzes like a bee that never learns. He lays the ring on a square of velvet and asks if the notch means anything to the maker. The nephew grins sadly. That notch is a signature of cheap stock they used in the late 80s. The alloy bent under the stamp. He thinks he sold 100 of those to boys who wanted to prove something on a budget. He opens a ledger, because the old world loved ledgers. There, under December 1988 and January 1989, lists of first names and initials, quick notes for engravings. He traces with a finger until he finds an entry where the letters line up like winners on a slot machine. CMB, purchased January 10th, cash, engraved while you wait. Next to it, in pencil, a description. Square stone, size 6. Boy with solvent smell. Jacket with oil on cuff. Laughed when pen slipped. The air goes thin. The nephew reads it again just to hear it out loud. He cannot give the detective a name. He can give him the description that matters. A smell, a sleeve, the kind of laugh that sharpens a room. The city tightens around a point you can't see yet. Back at the station, the detective stacks everything and lets the gravity of accumulation do what it does. The transfer station note about solvent, the drain glitter, the pocket grit, the ring with the notch sold to a boy who smelled like work, the purple smear in the alley near a gate that led to the back of the auto shop, the false starts that aren't false anymore because they help draw the outline. He writes the names of night managers again and circles the one who closed early in heavy snow, the one who passed a polygraph and looked like a man built to be suspected. Built is not proof, but you can measure a person against a shape and see if the edges agree. He drives past the shop at closing, watches the last car leave, notes the way the new night man locks the gate, and checks the door twice. Procedures change when stories pass through a place. He parks and sits, patient as a second hand. The phone rings in January even when it is spring. He answers out of habit at a desk that has learned his elbows. Silence. 2 beats. Click. He doesn't slam the receiver down because anger is a fire that eats time. He breathes. He looks at the map of the city on the wall, pins like stars no one wishes on anymore, and picks one that flickers when his eyes blur. He stands, gathers the ring, the ledger photocopy, the napkin drawing, the sample bag with pocket grit, and the case photo of purple melted into old asphalt. He is ready to say a name into a room and make the air change. Not yet for a warrant, not yet for handcuffs, but ready for a conversation in which the story stops being a weather report and starts being a confession that does not know itself as a confession until it hears the way the words fall. He leaves the precinct and steps into a wind that carries a sweetness he can't place until the memory lands. Grape gum. He tastes it, though he is not chewing. He follows the wind like it is a lead. The city, which pretends not to care, tips its head in the direction of an answer. The wind holds the taste of grape and old gasoline as the detective crosses the lot toward the auto shop gate. Night makes everything simpler. Fewer faces, cleaner lines. He studies the lock, the way the chain lies, the way habit leaves a pattern even when no one is watching. He files the texture of that chain away like a word he will use later. The office light is on. A figure inside bends over a ledger that wants to be left alone. He knocks. The new nightman opens the door with a look that says he is already tired of this story. The detective asks for Corey, the transfer station shift lead from the note, and the nightman shakes his head because names run through a city like water, and most of them end up downstream. He does offer the number of a mechanic who has worked at 3 different shops along Fort and knows everyone who ever held a wrench in winter. The detective takes it. He keeps the questions small. He keeps the tone soft. He lets silence do some work. At home, the mechanic's porch light is a yellow bubble in the dark. The man answers in a flannel shirt that has inherited the shape of his shoulders. He remembers Corey. Big voice, short fuse, always with the marker behind his ear. He remembers the winter with the solvent incident because the smell climbed into his mouth and sat there like a penny. He remembers who was around the shop then. A kid who washed bays and vacuumed cars for tips. The kid lived in a rented room 2 blocks off the bus line. Came in with a jacket sleeve blackened from leaning into engines he was not paid to touch. Laughed too quick. The mechanic gives the detective a name that lands like a nail on metal. Not the night manager, not the boyfriend, not the neighbor with the cardigan. A third thing, a shadow on the wall that looks familiar because you have seen it without knowing you were seeing it. The name unlocks the old kiosk ledger entry. The boy with the solvent smell, the jacket with oil on the cuff, the laugh when the engraving pen slipped. The detective builds a line between the market booth and the auto shop drain and the transfer station bin. He follows it to the rented room on the bus line. 3 upstairs windows and a stoop that tilts the way old teeth tilt. The landlord answers with a frown that doubles as a greeting. The boy lived there in 1989. He left in spring. He owes $30. He took nothing but a shoebox and a stack of car magazines. The landlord kept the room empty for a month out of superstition because the boy left on a night when sirens infected the street and he woke with a hand on his chest like someone had pressed a warning into him. The detective steps inside the small square of space and listens to how the air moves. The floor mutters. A nail head glints at the baseboard, where someone once tucked paper and then thought better of it. He pries the baseboard with 2 careful fingers and a breath. A folded flyer slips free. The St. Athanasius Bazaar ad with Dino's heart and the promise of romance for under $20. In the margin, a scribble. CMB, a date. January 10, a shape that could be a heart or a square drawn by a pen that was running out of ink. He feels the safe dial turn again. He takes the name to old payroll files and finds a time card from a car wash farther down Fort. The coin op with the blue stalls and the sign that blinks wrong when it rains. The time card shows late shifts, 10 to 2, 11 to 3. Winter hours paid on a punch clock that sometimes chewed corners and spit them back out. The manager remembers the boy because he did not mind the chemical stink and would scrape gum off the concrete with a putty knife as if earning tips from the floor. The manager remembers a fight near the vending machines one night when 2 men argued about quarters and a girl walked past with a coat too big, and one of the men turned his head and said something low that made the girl look at her shoes. The boy laughed. The manager told them to take it somewhere else. He did not learn the lesson until after the city swallowed those hours and spit back a poster stapled to the payphone. Missing. The boy quit in spring. People quit. The car wash kept eating quarters and spitting change. The payphone becomes a character. The detective asks Telco for where a 2-ring hang-up on an anniversary could come from in 1990, 1991, 1992. A trunk. An exchange. A tiny map of copper and memory. 3 payphones fit the pattern. One at a laundromat that died in a fire and returned as a bakery that smells like warmth. One under the bridge by the river, where pigeons teach each other how to live on metal. One at the coin-op car wash, blue stalls still humming. He parks across the street on the next anniversary night and finds a rhythm he can sit inside. He does not chase the call. He waits for the ritual to walk to him. The second ring arrives and dies like a moth in a porch light. He steps out into air that hurts his gums and crosses to the car wash. The payphone stares back with a dead face and a cracked plastic hood. He touches the receiver the way you touch a doorknob in a nightmare. Cold. A shape moves behind stall 2. A man with a dog. Nothing. He checks the coin return. Ridiculous and necessary, because people leave their tells in small places. Nothing. He logs the time. He logs the angle of that dead plastic hood. He logs the sound of water fans roaring even in winter because some people clean in the cold to prove they can. The lab calls with a whisper, not a shout. The grit from the coat pocket holds the glitter he saw in the drain and a pulverized hint of grape flavoring trapped in wax. Gum chewed, gum crushed, gum ground under the wheel of a cart or the heel of a boot. The purple smear in the photo is suddenly less abstract. It is not only stain, it is a sentence fragment. The detective returns to the alley with the photo and stands in the exact place where the camera stood, and agrees with the old tech for one breath before disagreeing forever. Candy wrapper. No collection. He kneels with his hands on the ground years too late and maps the distance between the smear and the gate, between the gate and the drain, between the drain and the path to the curb. He measures without a tape, with the sense that comes from walking and walking and walking a thing until your steps are the numbers. He finds Corey. The transfer station shift lead did not leave town. He moved 3 blocks and changed his hat. He agrees to talk because he always wanted to be part of a story that knew how to end. He remembers the load from the auto shop in that jagged January. He remembers the bite in the air when the bag tore. He remembers the kid who helped repack, quick with tape, quicker with a joke. He remembers because fear prints sharper than comfort. He writes down the kid's name the way you write down a plate number in a parking lot. The detective asks about what fell out of the torn bag before the tape went on. Corey shrugs. He is not lying. He is wandering around the edges of a memory that got salted. A paper cup with something black in it. A handful of small plastic sleeves. A strip of metal with holes like punctuation. And a thin chain. Not fancy, not gold, not even silver. The kind of chain you put on a ring when you want it closed without wearing it where people can see. The detective lets Corey talk until words dry. Then he thanks him. Then he sits in his car and lets silence ring. He tracks the boy's address after the car wash. Spring. A new room near the river. A job site that paid cash. Day labor on a demolition crew that took down a warehouse and sent its bones away in trucks. He visits the site as it is now, a parking lot with new lines. He kneels and touches paint that did not exist when the boy walked here with an engraved ring on a chain under his shirt. He stands and watches the river. Water remembers. Water refuses. He looks left and sees the old telephone trunk line as it cuts into a control box with a padlock that has known many keys. He draws a line between the ritual calls and the ritual route. January. Night. 2 rings. A man who wanted someone to hear guilt without catching it. He asks the kiosk nephew if any boy ever came back for a second engraving. Sometimes, the nephew says. They added dates. They added initials when one love fell and another rose from the floor. He flips the ledger with careful fingers and finds no second entry for CMB. He does find a note on a later Saturday. GMB. Cash. No engraving. Boy with oil sleeve. No laugh this time. He copies it. The ring in evidence is the first story. The second ring never got carved. The detective goes to the nurse who once hid in a freezer bay and shows her a photo array not of faces, but of hands. The backs of hands. The set of knuckles. The way grease writes its tight script along a lifeline. She points to one and then pulls back because it feels ridiculous to identify a hand. He tells her she is not naming a man. She is naming a memory, and memories can be cruel with their demands. She looks again and keeps her finger on the photo as if holding a pulse. The hand belongs to the boy, now a man, now someone who works out of a garage behind a rental house, tune-ups for cash, no paperwork, no website, just a number that changes every season. The detective does not knock on that door yet. He walks past and notes the smell that lives under the smell of now. Solvent and winter. He notes the way the man laughs at something the radio says, quick, sharp, as if the air is an enemy he can cut. He lays it all out on his desk with the patience of a mortician. The ring, the grit, the photo, the ledger copy, the napkin drawing, the transfer station page, the time card, the kiosk ad pulled from a rented room baseboard, the nurse's hesitant finger over a picture of a hand that never learned gentleness. He draws a circle around a night in January when a girl in a borrowed coat walked past a car wash where water hissed and a payphone waited, and a boy with a solvent jacket sleeve laughed at the wrong thing. He draws a line to the alley, and to the drain, and to the truck route, and to a box that carried away what mattered, because no one knew to call it evidence. He draws another line to the calls that came like penance and ended before help could find them. The city map on the wall is a constellation now, and the stars are not kind. He visits the family and does not tell them the name. He tells them the shape. He asks for permission to keep going. The mother looks at the ring photograph and then at the detective's face and nods because the nod is older than hope. The brother asks if the man will be arrested, and the detective says not by luck, not by coincidence, not by hunger, only by proof that does not melt when it meets a lawyer. He steps back onto the porch and feels January press a hand over his mouth. He breathes through his nose and tastes grape and rust and the last of the snow. He walks to his car and places his palm on the steering wheel like he is taking a vow. He returns to the car wash at dusk and watches the blue stalls gather their noise. The payphone is still dead, but the metal where thousands of hands have steadied themselves glows with a dull polish. He finds scratches on the hood where someone once dragged a coin up and down in a slow private rhythm. He imagines a boy counting 2 rings and then hanging up and breathing and then scrubbing a stain that would not leave. He steps back. He looks at stall 2 and the drain at its mouth. He kneels again because kneeling has become a way to talk to the ground. His fingers find a tiny square of metal lodged like a tooth in the seam where concrete meets grate. He works it free with the edge of his driver's license because sometimes a license is better than a knife. The square sits in his palm. It looks like a ring spacer, the cheap kind kiosks toss into a paper cup. He bags it. He labels it. He does not smile. He does not allow relief. He lets the city exhale through him. He is ready to stand in a doorway and say the name out loud, not to end the story, to make it tell itself without running. He will go to the rented garage with the laughing radio and the solvent ghost still in the walls. He will listen to the voice that calls every January and carries its own news. He will lay the ring on the table between them and the ledger copy and the spacer and the grit and the photograph where purple learned how to mean more than color. He will speak in a tone that sounds like winter. He will ask for the night in January. He will ask for the joke the boy told as he taped a torn bag. He will ask for the place where the rappers pointed when the snow froze them into arrows. And the room will change, because truth changes rooms before it changes the world. The city will lean in, and the river will pretend not to listen. The case that called itself cold will reach for its own throat and find a pulse. The knock on the garage door sounds like a question too old to answer. A pause, then a shuffling sound inside, a radio being turned down mid-song, a breath held just long enough to mean something. The man opens the door, eyes adjusting from grease-lit dusk to the steady stare of someone who has been waiting 20 years for this exact frame. The detective steps inside without invitation, because invitations are luxuries, and this isn't that kind of conversation. The garage smells like solvent, metal, rubber, and the ghost of winter, though the calendar says it's summer. Every mechanic's place smells the same, but this one has a sharper edge, like old secrets pretending to be oil stains. The man's face carries the softness of years spent unseen, the quiet arrogance of someone who thought the past had run out of breath. The detective lays the photo on the table between them. The purple smear, the alley, the frozen night. He doesn't explain yet. He waits for recognition, the small tightening around the eyes, the blink too fast, the air pulled wrong into the lungs. It comes, just a flicker. The man's tongue presses against his cheek, a muscle remembering how to brace. "What's this supposed to be?" he asks, but the tone betrays the memory. The detective slides the next item across. The ring, sealed, labeled, evidence number inked in sharp black. The man doesn't touch it, doesn't look away either. The silence stretches like wire. "You worked at Fort Otto, 1989, the detective says. Flat, factual. "You helped Corey with a solvent spill that January." The man nods once, slow, like someone acknowledging a rumor. "You remember a girl who walked that way the night of the 14th. The man's hand goes to his throat, not to protect, to check, as if the memory might still be stuck there. "I remember a lot of girls," he says, the laugh light but hollow. "That's not a crime." The detective nods. "No, but cleaning up after one might be." The man's head jerks, just slightly, and the laugh dies in his throat. The radio hums quietly in the corner, a song about summer, completely wrong for the room. The detective continues, the rhythm tight, deliberate. "You left town that spring, changed jobs, changed addresses, came back 3 years later, called this number every January. 2 rings. Hang up." He drops the old telecom log on the bench, the one smeared with carbon print. "You called from the car wash. Same night, same hour, every year. Why?" The man looks down at the table. There's a smear of black grease on the surface, and he begins to trace it with his finger. Slow circles, like drawing a map no one else can read. "I liked working nights," he says. "City's quieter." The detective doesn't blink. "You called her house. You knew the number by heart. You let it ring twice. Every year." The man shrugs, his mouth forming something that might be a denial but never lands. "Habit," he says. "People get habits." The detective opens a folder, not to read from it, but to let the air see what's inside. Photos, the old flyer from St. Athanasius, the ledger copy with CMB written in Dino's uneven hand. "You bought this ring. You had it engraved. January 10th. You wore it on a chain." He gestures toward the man's collar, where a thin outline darkens the fabric. The man's hand moves up instinctively, pressing against it, hiding what doesn't need to be confirmed. She dropped it, he mutters. You kept it, says the detective. A pause. The room contracts. Even the dust seems to stop moving. You know what's funny? The man says suddenly, his voice too calm. No one cared that night. Not the cops, not the city. They gave up before the snow even melted. And now here you are, digging in ghosts. The detective lets him talk. Confessions often start disguised as complaints. She was just walking, the man says. Didn't even look scared. Everyone's scared in that neighborhood. Not her. She looked like she thought the snow would protect her. He swallows. The sound is dry, sharp. But snow's just water waiting to disappear. The detective doesn't write. He doesn't need to. The recorder on his belt clicks softly, invisible. Tell me what happened. The man leans back on his stool, exhales through his teeth. You think it was planned, like a movie. It wasn't. I'd been working since morning. My hands were shaking. I just wanted to breathe air that didn't smell like antifreeze. I saw her. I said something stupid. She didn't even answer. Just kept walking. That's what got me. She didn't even turn. His eyes dart toward the ring on the table. The chain broke. She grabbed it. I tried to take it back. It wasn't supposed to. He stops. His mouth opens, but the sentence refuses to finish. It wasn't supposed to. The detective waits. The radio pops with static. Outside, a car passes. The tire hiss like a tape rewinding. The man finally says, She fell. One word that changes temperature. You hit her, the detective says, not as a question. I tried to stop her, the man insists, shaking his head. She ran toward the alley. I just wanted to take the ring back. His hands move like they still remember the shape of that night. She fell, hit her head on the curb. She stopped moving. I checked, but... He stops again. His breathing fractures. There was blood on the ice, and I just stood there. The detective's voice drops to a whisper. And then, the man looks at his hands, palms out, as if hoping they might explain themselves. The dumpster was open. I thought I could move her. Just until morning, just until I figured it out. I wrapped her coat around her. It was blue. I remember the tear. I remember the smell of grape. She'd been chewing gum. It got on my glove. He laughs, an awful sound. That's what stuck, that smell, even after the snow came back, even when they paved over everything. He covers his face. The silence that follows isn't relief. It's air evacuating a room. The detective lets the moment breathe. Then, quietly, why the calls? The man drops his hands. His eyes look emptied out. Because someone should have answered. Because I couldn't hear anything else. 2 rings, enough to wake the house. Not enough to talk. I just wanted her mother to know somebody still remembered the sound of her name. The confession sits there, raw, unedited. No drama, just the dull rhythm of guilt. The detective gathers the ring, the ledger, the photograph, the grit. You're under arrest, he says, voice steady. The man doesn't resist. He just nods. I've been waiting, he whispers. When they step outside, the air cuts clean and hard. The sky over Detroit is bruised purple, the same color as the smear in the old photo. The man glances once at it, almost grateful. You ever notice, he murmurs, how this city never forgets, it just hides. The detective says nothing. The cuffs click. The sound is final but not triumphant. At the precinct, paperwork blooms like frost. The younger officers whisper the way people whisper about miracles they don't quite believe in. 36 years cold, solved by a rapper, a ring, a voice that couldn't stop calling. The detective writes the report slow, every line a weight. Accidental death, the man will claim in court. Panic, not malice. But the chain around the ring, the hiding, the years of silence, all of it hums another word. Guilt. He drives home as dawn begins to bleed into the skyline. Detroit looks tired, older than it should, but alive in the way survivors are. He passes the diner, where the neon still misses its O, the bus stop, where the metal tooth gleams in the new light, the telephone pole with layers of paper history, curling off in the wind. He stops, gets out, stands there with his hands in his pockets and listens. The city hums its mechanical lullaby. Somewhere, a church bell, recorded now, plays the hour. He looks at the ground where the first poster once hung, where the first question was stapled into wood. Where did she go? He doesn't have an answer that feels holy, just the facts, just the noise of a city that finally heard its own heartbeat. He drives to the house with the crocheted curtains. The mother answers before he knocks. She has aged, yes, but the shape of waiting never leaves. She doesn't ask for proof, for paperwork, for photos. She just looks at his face and knows. Her eyes close. The air leaves her lungs in a sound halfway between a sigh and a prayer. You found her, she says, though she doesn't mean the body. She means the truth. He nods. She reaches for the ring. He hesitates, then places it in her palm. It's hers again, he says. The house feels different when he steps outside. Not lighter, just quieter. As if the story finally learned to rest. The detective sits in his car and watches the morning swallow the last of the night. A bus passes, sighing. A girl in a blue coat steps off. For a second, his breath catches. Then she crosses the street, disappears into the city. The case is closed on paper, but in his head, it keeps moving. A loop that never quite lands. He can still see the wrappers frozen in the snow, bright as bruises. Still hear the ring of the phone stopping at 2. Still smell grape and gasoline in the air. Detroit keeps its promises that way, by never letting you forget what it costs to finally remember. And as the morning light crawls up the alley where the cold once held its breath, he whispers the words the case began with, the words that kept him walking through decades of silence. Cold case, mysterious disappearance, community shock, strange clue, solved, but never forgotten. The confession hits the city like a tremor. Quiet at first, then everywhere at once. Detroit 1989 cold case solved. The headlines say, arrest shocks community. The kind of line that fills screens, that people scroll past between coffee sips and traffic lights, not realizing that for one family, it isn't a headline. It's the sound of time unfreezing. The mother doesn't watch the news. She turns the television to the church channel and leaves it on mute. The brother does watch, from the couch, motionless, eyes glazed, hand gripping a cup of cold tea. The detective sees it play out on every station. A photo of her, the one from the missing flyer, smiling in a way that time never let her again. Then a mugshot. Not the monster people expected, just a man who looks tired, a mechanic who could have fixed your brakes last week. The city hates that. People prefer evil to look like something they can't mistake. The prosecutor calls it manslaughter with concealment. The defense calls it an accident. The detective calls it what it always was, a theft of time. Not just the victim's years, but everyone else's too. The press camps outside the courthouse, their microphones trembling with anticipation. The mother arrives quietly, her coat too thin for the wind. The detective walks beside her, not as an escort, but as gravity. Inside, the room hums with the noise of human curiosity disguised as justice. The man sits at the defense table, hands folded like a schoolboy caught cheating. His lawyer whispers things that sound like math. Years, plea, sentence, maybe parole. He nods without listening. His eyes stay on the floor, the same color as the alley asphalt. The detective testifies. He tells the story the way the evidence demanded, not the way the city wants to hear it. No music, no melodrama. Just sequence, pattern, persistence. He talks about grape wrappers, about a ring bought in winter, about a call that rang twice every year like a heartbeat that refused to stop. The defense attorney tries to paint obsession. You followed a hunch, he says, not a fact. The detective looks at him, the kind of look that belongs to people who have seen too much to care about performance. Facts don't walk to you, he answers. You have to walk to them. The man finally speaks when asked to describe that night. His voice is soft, measured, rehearsed. He says, I panicked so many times it loses meaning. He says she fell as if the word fell can hide every motion that came before it. When the prosecutor asks why he moved the body, he says, "I didn't want anyone to think I killed her." The courtroom murmurs, a low animal sound of disbelief. The detective watches his mouth form words that try to rewrite history. Guilt is never clean. It always wants to sound like regret instead of choice. Outside, news cameras flicker like summer lightning. Commentators use words like closure, relief, justice. But in neighborhoods where porch lights still hum at night, no one says those words out loud. They talk instead about how the bus stop is different now, brighter somehow, as if the city itself exhaled. They say the diner replaced its sign. The O is fixed. The letters glow whole again. Little details that make people feel the world still knows how to repair itself. The detective doesn't attend the verdict. He waits in the parking lot, pacing the same lines he's walked in his head for decades. When the door finally opens, the prosecutor steps out, expression blank. "Guilty," he says simply. 10 years. Maybe 8 with good behavior. The detective nods. There's nothing to celebrate, nothing left to find. But the air feels heavier, like the city has remembered to carry its own weight again. That night, he drives with no destination. The radio plays old Motown, the kind that sounds like ghosts smiling. The streets he's walked 1,000 times look new, edges sharper, shadows thinner. He ends up by the river, parking near the spot where the waste trucks once unloaded. The water moves like slow glass, carrying the reflection of bridges and lights that never meet. He sits there with the file on his passenger seat, every page worn soft by fingerprints. He opens it one last time. The missing flyer, the photograph of the purple smear, the evidence tags, the transfer log, the ring photo, the scribbled note from the mother that she slipped into the file after the sentencing. "Thank you for not forgetting her voice." He doesn't read the rest. He already knows it by heart. The phone rings once before he realizes it's not in his imagination. An unknown number. He answers. Static. Then a breath. For a second his stomach drops. The same rhythm. 2 rings and silence. It can't be. The killer's in custody. The city shouldn't be haunted anymore. "Who is this?" he says. The line hums like a memory coming back from the dead. Then a voice. Female. Cracked with age, whispering, "It's over now." Click. Dial tone. He sits there, phone still at his ear, watching the reflection of the bridge flicker like a heartbeat. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe not. He closes his eyes. The sound of the 2 rings echoes against the inside of his skull. Softer this time. Not warning, not guilt. Release. Days pass. The story fades from headlines, replaced by new fires, new crimes, new names. That's how cities survive. By burying yesterday under today. But some nights, walking home, the detective still sees her in small ways. A girl crossing the street with her hood up, a reflection in a window that doesn't match the person standing there, a ripple in the puddle that glows purple under neon light. He doesn't chase those ghosts anymore. He lets them pass. He visits the mother once more in spring. The house smells of cinnamon and dust. On the wall, the missing poster is gone, replaced by a framed photo of her daughter at 17. The ring hangs beside it, glinting faintly under sunlight. "She'd have been 54 this year," the mother says. "I keep thinking what kind of woman she'd have become." The detective nods. "The kind who would have made the city better." She smiles faintly. Maybe she still did. When he leaves, the street feels warmer, not because the case is over, but because the silence around it finally learned how to rest. He drives past 4th Street. The auto shop is gone, turned into a lot of weeds and cracked asphalt. The bus stop is new, metal polished, light unblinking, a digital schedule replacing paper. But under the fresh paint, faint scratches remain. Someone once carved a name there with a key. 3 letters, CMB. He touches the metal, cold and clean, and for the first time in years, the cold doesn't feel like loss. It feels like memory refusing to vanish. He walks back to his car, breath rising like smoke, and whispers the only sentence that matters, one he's carried longer than any badge or file. She's home. Detroit hums behind him. unbroken, unhealed, but alive. The city never forgets. It just hides its grief in the sound of engines, in the flicker of streetlights, in the echo of phones that ring twice and stop, because sometimes that's all it takes to keep a story alive. The trial is done, but the noise doesn't stop. It only changes key. Detroit, a city built on repetition, pistons, engines, headlines, finds itself repeating her name. Talk radio hosts fill the gap between weather and politics with theories about redemption and decay. True crime podcasts dissect the timeline like surgeons who mistake cutting for healing. The detective hears his own voice in one of them, pulled from court audio, stripped of context, his pauses edited out. You followed a hunch, the host says, imitating the defense attorney's tone. You believed in rappers and ghosts. The audience laughs, a clean sound that doesn't belong to grief. He turns the radio off. The silence that follows feels truer than the applause. Inside the precinct, his desk is cleared. The chief shakes his hand, the polite rhythm of bureaucracy. Take the commendation, the chief says. You gave the city a story it needed. The detective nods, thinking how stories and justice aren't the same species. One survives on retelling, the other dies quietly once it's done. He signs the forms, turns in his badge, leaves the key on the hook. The door clicks behind him, like a clock ending a sentence. The man who made the call, who hid the girl, now lives in a cell 3 hours north. The detective drives there one gray afternoon because closure, people keep saying, is something you have to see. The prison rises from flat land like a warehouse for human noise. A guard leads him through corridors that smell of bleach and surrender. The man looks smaller through the glass, the sharpness sanded off. He smiles when he sees him. You're earlier than I thought, he says through the phone. Didn't think you'd visit. The detective sits, hands folded, like he's back in an interview room, only now the roles are blurred. Why did you call for so many years? He asks again, though he already knows. The man shrugs, the same tired shrug. Because she didn't answer the first time. His eyes twitch toward the glass divider, as if seeing through time. You ever wake up and smell something that isn't there? Grape. Always grape. You close your eyes and it's under your tongue again. He presses his palm to the glass, leaving a print that looks almost tender. I don't expect forgiveness, he says, but I figured you'd want to see what a ghost looks like when it runs out of places to hide. The detective doesn't answer. He studies the man's hand, the same one from the photo array, veins raised like road maps. A mechanic's hand, a killer's hand, a man's hand. No difference visible to the eye. He thinks of the mother, her quiet kitchen, the framed ring glinting in sun. You're not a ghost, he says finally. You're just the noise that stayed when everything else went quiet. He hangs up before the man can reply. Outside, the wind carries the sound of the prison gate closing, the same metal pitch as the bus door 36 years ago. He drives without music, letting the road hum for him. The farther he gets from the prison, the more the city returns. Billboards, rail lines, sirens folding into distance. By the time he reaches 4th Street, dusk has cut the edges of every building. The diner sign still burns steady. The bus stop gleams. The mural of the river, repainted since spring, shows sunlight bending over water that looks cleaner than truth. He stops at the bus stop, no one there, just the metallic whine of the streetlight. He sits on the bench, hands in pockets, and feels the rhythm of tires on asphalt, each one like a heartbeat dragging the city forward. Somewhere behind him, a phone rings. 2 short pulses, then silence. He turns. Nothing. The sound came from a memory. He lets it fade. For a moment, he wonders what justice really means when the dead can't see it. Maybe it's not about punishment but about balance. Setting the story upright after years of leaning. Maybe it's about standing in the same place where everything broke and refusing to look away. He imagines her walking this route again, coat too big, steps light, snow unfallen. He imagines her crossing safely, disappearing into a tomorrow she never got. The thought feels less like comfort and more like truth dressed in forgiveness. Back in his apartment, the file sits on the kitchen table. swollen with photocopies, sticky notes, and the smell of dust. He should archive it, send it to the basement vault, let the past become paper. Instead, he opens it one last time. Tucked inside is the napkin the nurse drew on, the ring sketch, the notch at the top. He traces it with his thumb, hears the nurse's trembling voice. He had a ring, square stone, scratched my face. He flips to the evidence photo, the purple smear, still bright after all these years. The color doesn't fade because it's not pigment, it's memory. He lights a cigarette, though he quit years ago, and watches the smoke build shapes on the ceiling. He thinks of the line Corey said at the transfer station. A thin chain, not fancy. He wonders where it ended up. Buried in landfill, sunk in river mud, melted into something anonymous. Maybe that's what happens to guilt. It dissolves until it becomes part of everything, invisible but everywhere. A letter arrives a week later, postmarked from the prison. He almost throws it away, then opens it. One line, written in uneven blue ink. Tell her I kept the wrappers. No signature. He folds it once, places it in the file, closes the folder for good. The city keeps moving. Spring leans into summer. The detective walks streets that no longer look like evidence. Children play where alleys once swallowed light. A new coffee shop opens beside the diner. The owner paints the door lavender. He notices the color and almost laughs. On quiet nights, he still hears the faint echo of tires cutting through slush, the breath before the second ring, the whisper of a name that has finally learned to rest. He's not haunted anymore, just marked, like the city, like the phone pole, like the snow that once recorded a secret and melted without erasing it. Justice is never loud in Detroit. It's the sound of a bus arriving on time, the flick of a switch on a porch light, the sigh of a mother closing her window, not to watch, but to sleep. And somewhere, deep under the city's humming skin, the river carries it all. Rappers, words, confessions, moving slow, steady, endless, whispering the same refrain. Cold case, solved, but never forgotten. Years pass quietly, the way dust gathers on a shelf. Slow, unnoticed, inevitable. Detroit changes its face again. New murals, new factories, new names on old buildings. But some corners resist time, keeping the same cracks, the same faint hum of unfinished stories. The detective has retired, though the word never quite fits. He keeps waking up before dawn, the body still wired for calls that no longer come. His coffee pot hisses like a tired witness. The old file sits in the bottom drawer of his desk, sealed, but not forgotten. Some nights he opens it just to feel the weight, the cold press of paper that once pulsed with life. He's not the hero the news once called him. The city forgets fast. The podcasts move on to fresher corpses, sharper mysteries. But the family still writes him letters, short, careful notes on unlined paper. Her grave has flowers every week, one says. Sometimes strangers leave gum wrappers. Maybe people remember more than we think. He folds the letter, slips it into a drawer, smiles without joy. The wrappers, always the wrappers. A film crew finds him. A true crime documentary, slick, young, confident. They want interviews, drone shots, slow-motion recreations of the bus stop under fake snow. They call the series Ghosts of Detroit, The Cold Files. He almost says no, but curiosity is its own hunger. He agrees to one day of filming. The director is a woman with sharp eyes and too much energy. She asks him to stand by the old diner sign, still blinking, now restored to full letters. Diner, bright and whole. Look toward the alley, she says, like you're seeing it again. He does, though he doesn't have to pretend. It's all still there, pressed into the pavement like handwriting. During the interview, her questions feel rehearsed. What drove you to keep looking? How did it feel when you finally solved it? He answers simply. It wasn't solved. It just stopped running. She frowns, trying to fit that into her script. But there was closure, right? He shakes his head. Closures for people who want stories to end. The dead don't close anything. They wait. The director doesn't respond. She nods to the cameraman. Signals cut. The episode airs 6 months later. It trends for a week. Viewers cry in the comments, post candle emojis, demand a follow-up. The detective watches it once, alone. His voice sounds different, older, slower, too calm. The recreated scenes look wrong. The snow too white, the alley too clean, the actor playing him too tall. The killer's actor looks haunted in all the wrong ways. He turns the TV off halfway through. The story doesn't belong to him anymore. It belongs to whoever needs it that night. He spends mornings walking along the river, the same one that once carried secrets in its slow, dirty current. They cleaned it years ago, dredged the bottom, pulled up twisted bikes, rusted shopping carts, bones of the city's first mistakes. Sometimes he wonders if the chain from that ring lies somewhere under the silt, rusting quietly, part of the ecosystem now. Maybe the water forgave before people did. On one of those walks, he passes a bench where someone has carved initials into the wood. CMB. The letters shimmer faintly in the morning sun, half filled with rainwater. He traces them with one finger, the way you might touch a scar to remember how it healed. A voice behind him, a woman, mid-30s, holding a camera. "You knew her, didn't you?" she asks. He turns, studies her face, and realizes she's too young to have been there. She must have learned the story later, from screens and rumors. He nods. Everyone did, in their own way. She sits beside him, uninvited but welcome. "My mom used to tell me not to walk home alone because of that case," she says softly. "Said Detroit never forgets its ghosts." He smiles faintly. "Your mom's right. We just learn to live with them." She clicks a photo of the river, then of the bench, then of him. Though she doesn't ask permission, he doesn't mind. When she leaves, he stays, watching ripples move toward the bridge, each wave carrying light the way guilt carries memory, quietly, without fanfare. Later that week, a letter arrives with no return address. Inside, a single photo, the ring hanging on a chain over a gravestone carved with her name. No note, just that image, grainy, taken in evening light. He studies the shadows, the way the ring catches sun like it remembers what warmth feels like. He doesn't know who sent it. Maybe the brother, maybe the nurse, maybe a stranger who needed to believe in full circles. He tucks it into the file, the last page. One night he dreams he's back in the alley. No snow, just rain, heavy and constant. She's there, standing under the flickering streetlight, older now, unafraid. "It's not your fault," she says. Her voice is calm, too calm. "You just listened longer than everyone else." When he wakes, his pillow is damp with sweat, the window open to the hum of a city that never sleeps. He writes the words down before they fade. "You just listened longer than everyone else." Maybe that's all solving a case ever means. Listening until silence starts to speak. The next morning, he walks to the diner, orders black coffee. The waitress, new, too young to know, asks, "You want sugar?" He says no, then changes his mind. Maybe just one packet. When she leaves, he opens it slowly. The sugar granules fall onto the counter in small white mounds, and for a moment, under the harsh diner light, they look like snow. He watches them melt into his coffee, and it feels like forgiveness. Not loud, not final, just present. Outside, the street glows wet from a brief rain. He steps into it, breathing deep, the air tasting faintly sweet, faintly chemical. Somewhere a bus sighs at the curb, opening its doors to no one. Somewhere else a phone rings twice, then stops. He doesn't look back. He just walks. The sound of his shoes against the wet pavement like a heartbeat that refuses to end. Because some stories don't finish when the credits roll. They keep breathing, hidden under streetlights, folded into the noise of a living city. And in Detroit, the cold never really leaves. It just changes shape. The city learns to move forward, but it doesn't learn to forget. Every so often, someone brings up her name. At a bar, in a classroom, in an article about unsolved cases that finally got their ending. Her story becomes part of Detroit's quiet mythology, the way certain corners hold a chill even in summer. Teachers mention it to remind students to walk in groups. Journalists cite it when writing about DNA archives and old evidence re-examined. Time smooths out the terror, but not the lesson. The detective keeps his distance from the noise. He lives in a narrow apartment above a bookstore, his days marked by the steady rhythm of footsteps on the stairs below. Sometimes people recognize him, not by name, but by that look of, "You were the one who found her." He nods politely, answers with silence. What he doesn't say is that he never found her. He found the truth, and it didn't bring her back. The brother calls once a year. On the same day, the phone used to ring twice and hang up. He doesn't talk long. "Mom's doing okay," he always begins, though the mother passed the previous winter. Still get letters from people who remember her. The detective says he's glad, because it's true. The brother has a daughter now, a child with her aunt's eyes. He named her Clara, though no one says that out loud. The name lives quietly, like a candle under glass. In early autumn, the detective receives a package wrapped in plain brown paper, no return address. Inside, a police report from another city, another year, handwritten on the first page. "Thought you should see this. It's a missing person notice from 2003, an unsolved case eerily similar. A young woman vanished after stepping off a bus in Flint, 40 miles north. No suspects, no body, one strange detail, a pack of grape gum found near the scene." He reads it twice, 3 times. His stomach knots, the kind of dread that knows too much. The pattern hums underneath the words, a melody he thought had stopped. But the handwriting on the cover letter isn't familiar. Young, rushed, the penmanship of someone who hasn't yet learned how heavy guilt can be. The note is unsigned. He contacts the Flint precinct out of courtesy, not authority. "Old detective," he says, "retired, just curious." The sergeant on the other end sounds wary, but kind. "We don't get many calls about that one," he admits. "Vanished clean, no movement on the bank cards, no digital trail. We keep the file open, but it's frostbitten." The detective asks about the gum. The sergeant hesitates. "Yeah, weird, right? Grape flavor. Same brand that went out of production in the 90s. Found the wrappers lined up in the snow. We figured it was kids. Why?" The detective doesn't answer. He thanks him, hangs up, sits there with the phone in his lap like it's a weapon. The gum brand, the wrappers, the alignment. Ghosts don't travel, he tells himself, but habits do, and some habits outlive the men who made them. That night, he can't sleep. His apartment hums with the soft chorus of city night. Distant sirens, the radiator's breath, a dripping faucet in the bathroom he hasn't fixed yet. He dreams of the alley again, only this time it isn't snow, it's leaves. The girl from Flint walks the same route as the first, her coat a different color, but the rhythm the same. A bus door closing, a shadow following, the silence between heartbeats stretching thin. When he wakes, his hands are shaking. The next morning he boards the train to Flint. He tells himself he's just visiting. The air feels sharper there, the streets narrower, the faces unfamiliar, but built from the same bones. The bus stop sits at the edge of a neighborhood that looks borrowed from Detroit. Old bricks, faded murals, a church bell that chimes from a speaker. He stands by the curb and studies the ground. No snow now, only dirt and a few cigarette butts. But in his mind, the scene is alive again. Wrappers caught in the wind, footprints vanishing faster than truth. He walks the path she would have taken. From the bus to the streetlight, to the alley where the report said her phone signal died. The air grows colder with each step, though the sun is out. He knows this feeling, the world shrinking, the past reaching up through the cracks. He stops at the corner where the footprints ended and sees a small metal grate near the curb, rusted, half covered by leaves, drain pipe. He crouches, peers in. Dark water glints below. He almost laughs. Of course there's a drain. There's always a drain. At the precinct, he asks to see the case file. The sergeant gives him a look reserved for ghosts and stubborn old men. "You think it's connected?" the man asks. "No," the detective says too quickly. "But it feels familiar." The sergeant hums. "We'll take whatever familiar we can get." They hand him the file. Thin, underfed, the kind that never stood a chance. Inside are the photos. Bus stop, alley, rappers, the same purple shimmer. Back in Detroit, the documentary crew hears about it before he can hide the news. The producer calls. "We want to follow you," she says. "This could be a sequel, cold case copycat. The public would love it." He hangs up without a word. The city has enough ghosts without selling new ones. But that night, the phone rings twice, then stops. He freezes. He checks the caller ID. Blocked. He listens to the silence it leaves behind. Then, almost without thinking, he picks up the receiver and says, "Who is this?" Nothing. Just breath. Not male, not female. Just breath, long and steady, like someone testing if he's still listening. He stays on the line until it clicks off. He knows what logic says. Prank. Coincidence. An echo built by memory. But the old case carved superstition into his bones. He sits awake until dawn, the city lights sliding slow across his walls. When the first bus sighs outside his window, he knows he'll go back to Flint. One more walk, one more look. He can't help himself. Some stories don't end. They just hand you another chapter. Before leaving, he takes the ring photo from the drawer. The chain gleams faintly in the morning sun. He places it in his coat pocket, not as evidence but as company. Detroit watches him go, its windows blinking, its engines humming, its ghosts leaning just enough to whisper, "You thought you finished the story." The story wasn't finished with you. Flint greets him with a kind of silence Detroit never had. Wider, emptier, more polite. The city feels like it's holding its breath. He steps off the morning bus with the same ache in his knees he used to feel before a stakeout. The streets look washed out, drained of color. A gas station across from the depot hums under flickering lights. A man in a puffy jacket nods at him, then looks away. He could be anywhere in Michigan. It all smells like diesel and winter waiting to happen. He walks the route the girl took, slow, deliberate. The air carries that old metallic taste he knows too well. Grape wrappers, purple on gray, lie trapped under a drain grate near the alley mouth. He crouches, touches one with his pen. Faded logo, vintage brand. He pockets it carefully in a small evidence bag he brought out of habit, though he's not a detective anymore. The paper crinkles like a heartbeat. A shop sign nearby reads, "Corey's Auto and Paint." The name makes him stop cold. He crosses the street, stares through the fogged glass. Same type of shop. Bays, oil drums, fluorescent hum. He steps inside. The smell hits first. Solvent, old grease, dust. A young man behind the counter looks up, early 30s, hair tied back. The same quick defensive stare mechanics inherit from watching too many people accuse them of overcharging. "Help you?" the man asks. The detective studies his face. Something about the shape of the jaw, the hands, familiar. "Corey's your name?" he asks. The man nods. "My dad's, actually. I just kept the sign. He passed a few years ago. Used to work down near Detroit. Transfer station or something." The detective's chest tightens. The air folds in on itself. He nods slowly, pretending to browse the old parts shelf, his fingers brushing the dust off a small box labeled chains. Assorted lengths. Inside, twisted metal glints like memory. He feels the cold rising up his spine. The young man keeps talking, oblivious. "You from the department or something? You've got that look." The detective forces a smile. "Used to be." He slides a business card across the counter, blank except for his number. "If you find anything strange around here, old evidence, boxes from the 80s, anything like that, give me a call." The mechanic shrugs. "Sure, man. We clear out junk all the time." He pauses. "You investigating that missing girl from the bus stop? Cops were here a few years ago. Nothing came of it." The detective doesn't answer. He thanks him, steps out into the street, the wrapper burning in his pocket. He needs distance to think. The river isn't far. It always comes back to a river. The water there is dark, slow, the kind that hides more than it shows. He leans on the railing and stares at his reflection. Older, smaller, half drowned in morning fog. Every case teaches you a rhythm, and this one beats like deja vu. The same pattern, new face. The same clues resurfacing through new hands. He checks the missing girl's file again at the Flint station. The detective in charge, a woman named Alvarez, meets him in the hallway, coffee in one hand, doubt in the other. "You're the one from Detroit, right? The cold case guy?" He nods. She gestures for him to follow. Her office is cluttered, paper stacked like walls. She flips through the folder. "We've got Jack." Her phone pinged once, dead zone near the river. No body, no witnesses. "But you'll like this. We found her keychain in the drain where those wrappers were. Guess what was attached?" She slides a photo across the desk. A small silver ring, bent, square stone missing. Inside, the faint impression of letters too shallow to read. "Could be anything," Alvarez says. "But the lab says it's the same alloy used in cheap jewelry from the 80s. Someone's souvenir, maybe." He doesn't speak. He feels the air tilt, the same material, the same shape, the same impossible echo. "You think this connects to your case?" she asks. He exhales slowly. "I think patterns have long memories." She watches him for a long moment. "You ever think about how every city has its own ghosts, and sometimes they just trade zip codes?" He nods. "All the time." That night, he checks into a small motel near the outskirts, the kind with carpets that hold secrets and neon signs that buzz like insomnia. He spreads both case files across the bed. Detroit 1989 and Flint 2003. Photos, statements, maps. He lines them side by side, edge to edge. Bus route, alley, drain, ring, gum wrappers. The symmetry is brutal. The only difference is timing. He circles Corey's auto and paint on the map. The name, the connection, the chain box. He doesn't believe in coincidence anymore. He thinks about the young mechanic, the same age the first killer was when everything happened. He thinks about inheritance, the kind that doesn't come in money or property, but in silence. The sins passed down like heirlooms, hidden in toolboxes and mannerisms. At 2 a.m. his phone vibrates. Unknown number. He answers. 2 rings, then a voice. Low, hoarse, male. "You shouldn't be here." Click. He sits there, phone to his ear, heart pounding. No one knew his room number. No one but the motel clerk and the wind. He stares at the window. Outside, the parking lot is empty except for one truck idling under a broken light. He can't see the driver. The truck door opens, then closes, and the sound fades into the dark. By morning, he's back at Corey's shop. The door is locked, the lights off. He peers through the glass. The shelves are bare, tools gone. Only a stain on the floor remains, dark and fresh. He calls Alvarez. "You said the case was cold," he says. "It just got warmer." By noon, the shop is a crime scene. Yellow tape flutters in the wind like a warning whispered too late. Inside, they find signs of struggle. Spilled solvent, a dented wrench, blood trail leading to the back exit. But no Corey, no sign of where he went. In the alley behind the shop, near the dumpster, a scatter of grape gum wrappers glint in the dirt. Alvarez looks at him like she's trying to see inside his head. "You think he's another victim?" He shakes his head slowly. "No, I think he's part of the same echo. Maybe he thought he could bury it. Maybe it came back for him." That night, the news breaks again. Flint 2003 cold case reopened. Detroit detective links new evidence. The city murmurs. The headlines rhyme with the past. The cycle begins again. He watches the coverage on the motel TV, muted. Just the crawl of subtitles. He sees his own name, his own tired face reflected in the screen. A man haunted not by ghosts, but by repetition. Outside, the neon hums. 2 rings, then silence. The story isn't over. It never is. The detective turns off the light, sits in the dark, and whispers to no one. The dead don't rest when the living keep making their mistakes. Morning cracks open with the sound of rain hitting metal. The city of Flint looks drowned before the day even begins. The detective stands under the awning of the motel, cigarette unlit, eyes on the horizon that refuses to brighten. The news trucks are gone. The tape around Corey's shop flaps in the wind, yellow against gray. The street smells like oil and fear. He knows this scent. It's the same one Detroit wore after the first arrest. The same silence. The same sense that something unfinished is breathing just out of sight. Inside the precinct, Alvarez looks like she hasn't slept. "We found Corey's truck," she says. "Abandoned near the river. Driver's side door open. Blood on the seat. Partial print on the wheel. Doesn't match him." The detective feels the shift, the quiet tremor that comes when the past reaches out a hand. "The prints being analyzed," she continues. "Could be a transient, could be someone else, but there's something you should see." She pushes a photo across the table, a close-up of the steering wheel. Taped there, neat as a signature, is a folded grape gum wrapper. Inside it, written in thick black ink, 3 letters, CMB. He stares at it for a long time, the edges of the world blurring around the photograph. "Someone's playing with you," Alvarez says. He shakes his head. "No," he murmurs. They're finishing a sentence. He feels the cold settle in his chest, the weight of years shifting like gravel. Whoever left that knows exactly what it means. They send divers into the river by dusk. The water is swollen, brown, unforgiving. By nightfall, they pull up the body. Corey, wrists bound with an old mechanic's rag, a thin chain wrapped twice around his throat, the same kind of chain they once used to hang a ring. The detective watches from the riverbank, rain soaking his coat, the light from the ambulance strobes flickering like dying film. The divers whisper the word everyone dreads: murdered. The story hits the wires before midnight. Flint mechanic found dead, possible link to historic Detroit cold case. Reporters swarm. The detective turns off his phone, drives back to his apartment, the road humming like static under the tires. He's past anger now, past grief. What's left is something quieter, a kind of bone-deep recognition. Evil isn't inherited by blood. It's learned, copied, mimicked like a ritual. Someone has been watching. The letter arrives 2 days later. No return address, same paper as before. Inside, one sentence written in block letters. "You listened longer than anyone else. Now listen again." Taped beneath the words is a small plastic bag containing a grape wrapper. New, fresh, the ink not yet faded. He drives back to Detroit that night. The highway is empty, black water shining on the asphalt. The city greets him like an old wound that never fully scarred. He parks near the bus stop, the one that started everything. The mural of the river gleams faintly in streetlight, paint peeling at the edges. The bench is wet. He sits anyway. The cold seeps into him. Somewhere far off, a church bell plays a recorded chime, the same melody that used to ring from real metal when she disappeared. His phone buzzes once. Unknown number. 2 rings. Silence. Then finally, a voice. Female. Calm. "You shouldn't have opened it." Click. The line dies. He sits there, pulse steady, breath fogging in the dark. Then he hears it, a shuffle behind him, footsteps too deliberate to be random. He turns. Nothing but a shadow slipping into the alley. He follows, because he's always followed. The alley smells the same: wet concrete, exhaust, faint sugar. At the far end, a faint glow, the reflection of something metallic wedged under a drain grate. He kneels, heart hammering, pulls it free. A ring. Not the same one, newer, cleaner, but the same make, same square stone, same cheap engraving inside. CMB. He laughs once, low and bitter. "You learned your history well," he whispers to the darkness. Back at his apartment, he lays the ring on the table beside the others. Photographs, files, evidence. The circle completes itself. The first killer confessed out of guilt. The second one died trying to hide it. Now there's a third. Someone resurrecting the ritual not out of accident, but devotion. This isn't repetition. It's tribute. He studies the ring, the wrappers, the pattern. Every generation inherits a story. Some just choose to keep it alive. He wonders if the first killer's confession, broadcast and archived, found ears it wasn't meant to. The documentaries, the podcasts, the endless retelling. How many minds did it plant a seed in? How many people looked at that story and saw not horror, but legacy? The city outside hums, neon flicker painting ghosts on the walls. He can't tell if he's awake or still inside the case. He calls Alvarez, his voice steady. "It's not over," he says. "It never was. Someone's continuing it. Someone who knows every detail down to the ring." Alvarez exhales. Then we start again. By morning, the river gives up one more thing. A shoebox sealed with electrical tape, lodged against a piling. Inside, newspaper clippings from both cases, the same grape wrappers folded like origami, and a single photo of the detective taken from across the street, sitting at the bus stop the night before. He stares at it under the precinct light, the edges trembling slightly in his hand. For the first time in decades, he feels real fear, not for the past, but for what's learning to breathe inside the present. Detroit doesn't sleep that night. Patrol cars move slow down empty streets, their lights washing over walls that have seen too much. Somewhere, another phone rings twice and stops. Somewhere, a chain gleams in the dark. Somewhere, the story that was supposed to end has started again. He looks out the window, the river glinting under dawn, and whispers to himself, voice raw, almost reverent. "Cold case. Solved once. Reopened twice. Now alive again." The city listens. The line between memory and prophecy blurs, and somewhere, beneath the hum of engines and rain, a girl's laughter, or maybe just the wind, moves through the alley, soft and steady, as if reminding him that some stories don't die. They adapt. The city moves differently now. Detroit hums like a machine that remembers being broken. Sirens no longer startle anyone. They're part of the rhythm, background noise like rain. But for the detective, every sound feels personal again. Every ring, every echo, every heartbeat of the street. He knows the past didn't end. It just learned to breathe through new lungs. The copycat hasn't struck again. Not yet. The news has already labeled it the cold case resurrection. It's everywhere. Headlines, podcasts, speculative panels. People love stories that rhyme with the ones they already know. The detective watches the broadcasts in silence, sees his own face in grainy footage, the tired man who once brought closure and accidentally built a legend. He understands now. Solving the case didn't end it. It baptized it. He meets Alvarez one last time, at a diner halfway between Flint and Detroit. The same kind of diner, the same smell of grease and coffee. Outside, rain presses fingerprints against the windows. Alvarez sets down a folder. "We ran the print from Corey's truck," she says. "Came back partial, inconclusive, but it matches fragments in two older databases. One from the transfer station fire records in '89, one from a parole report in '03. Could be coincidence. Could be bloodline." He nods slowly. "A son?" She shrugs. "Maybe. Maybe someone who thought he was cleaning his father's name by repeating the crime. Maybe just someone who liked the sound of the story." The detective stirs his coffee, watching the ripples spiral outward. "Stories are the most dangerous inheritance," he says quietly. "They make murder sound like destiny." Alvarez leans back. "So what now?" He looks out the window. The highway lights smear across the glass, long ribbons of white. "Now we wait," he says. "Because whoever this is, they need an audience. They'll call again." She studies him. "And you'll answer." He smiles, a tired, crooked thing. "I always do." That night, he drives back to the river, the place where all of it started, where each circle closed and reopened. The air is colder, sharp enough to sting. He stands by the railing, the water below black as oil. The shoebox evidence, the wrappers, the photos, all of it lies in a sealed case at his feet. He hesitates, then lifts it, lets it fall into the river. It sinks fast, swallowed whole. Maybe it will rest there, maybe not. The phone in his pocket buzzes. 2 rings, silence. He doesn't flinch this time. He answers and waits, breathing. Then a voice, calm, almost kind. "Do you understand it now?" He closes his eyes. "Yes." "Then you know it was never about her," the voice says. "It was always about you." The line clicks dead. He stands there, staring into the dark, the reflection of the bridge lights trembling across the water. In the distance, thunder rolls over the city. Or maybe it's an engine. Or maybe it's something older, the sound of the past turning over in its sleep. He walks away slowly, coat heavy with rain, the city opening in front of him like a mouth that never learned to close. The bus passes, the same route as before, doors hissing open though no one's waiting. For a moment, he sees her again, the girl with the borrowed coat, the missing laugh, the weightless steps. Then she's gone, folded into mist. He doesn't chase her, not anymore. Somewhere behind him, a payphone begins to ring. 2 sharp notes, then silence. Detroit exhales. Cold case. Solved. Reborn. Eternal. The credits, if there were any, would roll here. Slow, quiet, steady, over the hum of a city that keeps its ghosts close and its truths closer. Because in Detroit, the dead don't haunt the living. They wait for them.